What a game, and really what a win for Pitt. This is the Pitt edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm your host, as always, Mike Asti, and I am joined for this one by Mike Vukovcan, our head honcho over there at Pittsburgh Sports Now. You also want to head over to Pittsburgh Sports Now for all the rest of our postgame coverage from Alan Saunders and company, again over there at PittsburghSportsNow.com and at PGH Sports Now on Twitter. And Kenny Pickett leads the Pitt Panthers to a major victory on the road in the Johnny Majors Bowl in Knoxville, in Tennessee, in front of a packed crowd, as they're able to pack the house. We're beyond COVID in terms of stadiums in many of these places in college football. And it was a great game all the way through. It was an entertaining game to watch. It certainly is a nail-biter for, I'm imagining, both fan bases. The defense is maybe not at a premium, but the offense is both showing up. Kenny Pickett doing what he had to do, and Pitt holding on to get a victory despite Tennessee trying to come back at the end. We're going to touch on all of that. Feel free to chat along, and of course, subscribe to this channel while we're at it. So, Mike, to get it started here, Pitt gets the victory 41-34. They had control of this game most of the way, but Tennessee certainly flirted at times with it looking like they could flip things. I'm sure some Pitt fans also watching, thinking, oh, maybe this is where Pitt's going to blow it like in past years. We've talked about how this is a different Pitt team. They were very dominant over UMass, but that's UMass, so you can't take away too much from beating UMass. Beating Tennessee, even though this isn't Peyton Manning or T. Martin's Tennessee, who they honored at the game, that's certainly not Johnny Majors' Tennessee, it's still an SEC team, a team that's arguably equal, if not above Pitt as a program, still a team that you want to make a statement in beating and doing it on the road. Right away, what are your now immediate takeaways from Pitt's big victory on the road again against Tennessee? This is a game you certainly can brag about, if not last week.
And this is just a big win. It's not a conference win,
right?
But it's a momentum win. I think it's a statement win as far as this team, this offense, and what they can do. The reason Pitt won this game is pure and simple quarterback play. Tennessee's, maybe if they would have started Hendon Hooker instead of Eric Milton or Joe Milton, maybe right, things would have been different. I don't know that. But Kenny Pickett was the best player on the field today. I'm not so sure that, I know Pitt fans, they got on me a little bit for being too hyped last week when I said that this team is different because it's different because they could score points as opposed to hoping to win and hoping
right.
to score.
Right, the offense had to win this game. Right.
Yeah, they scored 40 points and they left some on the field. I don't think it's an understatement to say that Kenny Pickett might be the best quarterback in the ACC this year. I know the guy down at North Carolina is going to get hype. I know Clemson, just because they're Clemson. If it's on my money and I want a guy that's going to lead and all things are being equal as far as position players on the field, I'm comfortable with Kenny Pickett leading my team. What he showed out there today, he just never looked rattled. He was tremendous on third down, aside from late in the game when I think,
right,
you could argue Mark Whipple got a little conservative in the fourth quarter with a lead. You could argue that, but when the game was on the line in the first three quarters and they had to move the ball to score points, Kenny Pickett, when he had the ball in his hand, was going to get the job done. This game reminded me a little bit of a couple of years ago, Mike, when the Pitt scored 40-some points. I remember once against North Carolina, the offense scored enough, and then the defense let them down. I was having flashbacks of that, saying, is this going to happen again here? Where the offense scores 40 points, 35-plus points.
That would have been ironic, too, the last 2 years where the offense now is able to be there full onslaught and for the defense to,
Yeah, and it happened a couple times that year. I believe that was 2 years ago. And it was disappointing because Pitt had a good defense, and for whatever reason in crunch time, they let him down. Didn't happen today. Brandon Hill came up with a big interception. John Patrician made the big stop on fourth and inches on the second to last drive of the game. And they did what they had to do. Was this a perfect win? Heck no. There's plenty of stuff that you could point out that things went wrong with Pitt, special teams, pass defense, stuff like that.
Right.
But at the bottom line is they won 41-34. Looks a very good chance that they're going to go undefeated in non-conference play for the first time under Pat Narduzzi. Never happened before. And, this team slowly, take care of business, but sets up to start conference play against Georgia Tech undefeated.
And again, Pitt took care of business in week 1 over UMass, but I do believe Pitt made a statement with this victory on the road against Tennessee. Again, this isn't Tennessee, a team that people are predicting to win a national title, but this is still a solid program. They feel they're on the rise as well. They looked good in their week 1 game. And this is a big deal for Pitt in particular because, again, looking for that first season undefeated out of conference play, looking for a 9-win season for Narduzzi with, if you look at the schedule, yeah, you're going to have Clemson. You're probably going to have Notre Dame. They're going to be problems for you. But otherwise, North Carolina has already been vulnerable. We've already seen them have a hiccup early on in the season. Pitt certainly could potentially stack wins, potentially have a strong start early in the year, and then keep it going, unlike in past years. Again, Pitt winning 41-34. This is the Pitt Postgame show here on PSL.
I'll tell you one other thing, Mike. The other thing that this does is, I don't know what this means. This doesn't mean anything for the program, for the team on the field. But what this does is we see it in our traffic. Not this has anything to do with Pittsburgh sports now.
Sure.
But what this win will do is, we were talking about this before the game, is this will keep interest in the Pitt program.
Well, that's not a small deal. Right.
Yeah, as far as people going to games, talking about them,
right,
having interest. You lose this game, the first thing would have been same old Pitt.
Same old Pitt, right? Absolutely.
They can't win the big one.
Right.
They beat up on the scrubs. They can't, blah, blah, blah. What this does is it just keeps Pitt in the good light for the next month or so, heading into probably Virginia Tech, undefeated.
Right.
And it could be a game of ranked teams, Pitt versus Virginia. It just keeps interest in the program, and they fight off any sort of negativity from the outside.
No, and I don't think that's a small deal because, again, Pitt has had their troubles with attendance inside Heinz Field. The pandemic doesn't help things, and this is a program that is trying to be built up, get back to glory. Narduzzi potentially now as a veteran team. I think that's part of the difference with this Pitt team, too. You mentioned John Patrician. He feels like he's been in college for 25 years. He's literally been there for 7 years if you include Penn State and Pitt and the transfer. That's experience. Addison now has experience. Kenny Pickett obviously has experience as a leader of this team. Clearly a coach on the field, telling his troops what to do and having command of this team more so than even in recent years. His talent is there, but now more of a team leader. This is the year that it's all been built up to. Maybe some thought it should have been last year. Narduzzi maybe even thought it should have been last year, but maybe in reality, it should have been this year because this now is even more of a veteran team that still has talent in a potentially winnable schedule. So that's a big deal. And I don't think it's a small deal to keep the interest going, win each week, help the interest continue, and then make sure the fans are still in it because win, lose, or draw, you do want to have the fans in it. You do want to have attendance. You do want to have intrigue to continue to have your program be successful. Mike, I do want to ask you this, though, because I think we agree Kenny Pickett's been maybe better than some fans even want to give him credit towards his Pitt career. Now his talent around him. He's certainly having a great start to this year. Kenny Pickett was, I don't want to call him perfect, but this was a statement win for him. Borderline, 24 for 36, 285, 2 TDs, sacked a couple times, a QB rating of over 150. He also 10 carries, 19 yards, and a touchdown after 30-plus on the ground last week. So, again, he shows he can do it with his legs. He's a veteran. He's a big part of this team's success. What else about Pitt besides Kenny Pickett and his experience and his talent, and now that coming together, helps you believe this is a different Pitt team and was able to lead them to this victory? Because there were holes on defense. There's other players with them on offense, but this team overall does feel different. It had hype coming into the year. What else besides Pickett makes you feel that way?
The skilled position players. We talked to, Jordan Addison's going to get talked every week. He's going to be the number one target for defenses every week. He's an NFL wide receiver, probably won't play at Pitt for 4 years. But in the past, Pitt might have had one or two of those guys. And once you get the first guy out, Pickett didn't have, or any other quarterback didn't have the options. Now, Tazier Mack, you were talking about veterans. He's another guy. He came back. He had over 100 yards today for Pitt. Big catch down the sideline and a perfect back shoulder throw by Pickett. Lucas Krull, tight ends that they haven't had since I was a kid. as far as a tight end. That was the tight end that was any good. That was an option.
Sure.
It could be argued that he was a little. I saw on Twitter, and I didn't necessarily disagree that they need to make him a bigger part of the offense. They just have so many skilled position players that it's very hard to stop this offense. I have to give credit to this offensive line, the run blocking. I don't know. I didn't see the tape. Didn't look like there were a lot of holes, but I will say this: when Kenny Pickett dropped back to pass, he wasn't getting touched by Tennessee. I can maybe think of one time that in this pass-heavy offense that this offensive line stood up, protect their quarterback, gave him enough time. And if they're able to do that, and he's able to just look around and pick apart a defense, things are going to be good. But to answer your question, they just have so many weapons on offense that that's why I think it's going to be, I don't want to say easy, but I think it's going to be regular for Pitt to score 35 points every game.
Yeah, and even if they would lose, because I don't think anyone's predicting they're going to go undefeated this year, you still assume they're going to score points. You still assume they're going to have points on the board. The offense isn't going to get embarrassed again. This is the Pitt Postgame show here on PSL. Subscribe if you like what you see and hear to get notification anytime we put anything up here on this channel. Mike Vukovcan and Mike Asti. Also head over to Pittsburgh Sports now for the rest of this postgame coverage after Pitt's win over Tennessee. And even looking at Tennessee's offensive numbers here, could you keep mentioning what Pitt defensively did or did not do? We're talking about against Tennessee's defense. You allow 34. The defense almost let this offense down. You could hang that maybe that's the negative of this game, is how that defensive unit will fare against powerful offenses like Clemson later on in the season. But you look at the numbers here, 189, 54 in terms of Milton on the ground. Callaway leading receivers with 60. It's not like the Tennessee offense exploded. This was a bad day statistically for the Tennessee offense. It almost makes you wonder how they got 34 points. And yeah, there were some issues, special teams, etc. But the stats don't lend you in that direction. So my question here would be, is the defense your concern later on in the season? If this somehow would have the wheels fall off, Pitt should easily be 5-0 going into Virginia Tech based on this schedule, and then it certainly will get tougher. And what level of concern do you have on this Pitt defense if they're the concern? Because it wasn't their best of outing, but it wasn't that horrendous, even though 34 points were on the board for the Volunteers.
No, I think anytime you go up against a hypo offense,
right,
it's a little different. They're not going to face this every week as far as snapping the ball every 10 seconds. Sure. And when you're dealing with a young secondary, Pitt graduated 3 guys in their secondary last year. Yeah. That was tough on them. They're learning.
Hamlin was tweeting this game. I don't know if you saw that. Hamlin was live tweeting.
No, it's tough out there for them when you're a veteran or whatever. So they're not going to face this every week. And the other thing that gave them a little bit of problems were the mobility of the. This wasn't wasn't a very good tackling game for Pitt. I think they had a lot of missed tackles, especially at the quarterback position. And they're not going to face guys with the mobility of Milton and Hooker. So I think if a team is just going to drop back and try to beat Pitt passing the ball, I'd take my chances with the secondary holding up and the guys on the defensive line getting after the quarterback. This was just a weird mix with this offense. I think they might have to face this twice more with North Carolina. They don't run as quick as this, but Howe has the mobility to move around, and then Clemson. Obviously, they're gonna run with some pace, so that's going to be a challenge. But I don't think this is going to be probably the quickest offense that they're going to face all year. And as the season goes on, this defense, which is young and experienced, is going to get better. And hopefully, if the secondary is able to hold up, which I think they have enough talent back there, it's whether or not they're able to mature quick enough. I think they're going to be. I think they're going to be fine, but we'll see. Today was different. They're not going to face this over the next few weeks.
Right. Yeah. Again, and talking about the next few weeks here, Pitt with a 41-34 win over Tennessee, as we're discussing that big win. And it is a big win, no matter what you think of the Tennessee program for Pitt and what Pitt's trying to do this year and where Pitt thinks their program is here on this Pitt edition of the postgame show.
Hey, Mike, I want to bring one thing up.
Absolutely.
One thing up real quick is a little tip of the cap to I know the fan base for Pitt is ridiculed a lot for not showing up. Supporting the team.
Yeah.
I threw this out there yesterday as far as I was asking Pitt fans to shoot us pictures of being down in Knoxville.
You got a lot.
And we got so many pictures, and from what I saw and heard, tip of the cap for the Pitt fans, the way they support. They went on the road, they made this trip, and I wasn't in the stadium, so you're not going to drawn out the Tennessee fans.
Right.
But I think you saw at the end of the game Narduzzi and the crowd and the team turning around to the people in the tips in the pit section and tipping their cap. I think it was a pretty good effort on their part, as far as, it's not like they're traveling to State College or West Virginia. It was nice show of support, I think, for the Pitt fans, something that they don't always do.
Yeah, and you can ask Alan Saunders about the journey. I've actually been down there before as well. It's not necessarily next door. It is a tough place to get to. Certainly a lot of those Pitt fans, maybe they're flying, maybe they're driving, but it's not next door, as you mentioned. So to have a fan base supporting, and this goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, Mike, those fans, maybe they're rabid fans, they're going to support always, but to continue that energy to all of the fan base at all levels, this win can help do that. And having wins like this and building upon those wins and making sure you take care of business in the coming weeks, as I was going to mention, Western Michigan, New Hampshire, Georgia Tech, who's a bottom feeder of the ACC, even though a major conference team, prior to Virginia Tech, because then you get Virginia Tech, Clemson, and Miami. Miami's not maybe what some think they are coming into the year, seemingly always the case for Miami. Tons of talent, though, tons of recruiting talent with the Hurricane. Virginia Tech already with a hiccup, but still a ranked team. And Clemson, of course, is freaking Clemson, despite their loss to open the year. So it's 3 in a row, and you want to start with wins prior to that. Pitt almost, if you want to make this a special year, Pitt basically can't lose going into Virginia Tech, because it wouldn't be crazy to lose all 3 of those games. But if you go and you lose those 3 in a row, you have the wins prior, and then you win out afterwards. Overall, it's hard to complain, and maybe you steal one of those 3. Certainly they're winnable games, to Virginia Tech and Miami. Clemson probably not so much, but who knows? But the schedule's going to get brutal for a few weeks in a row, which makes more importance on these next few weeks in getting these wins, looking impressive while doing so. But keep continuing this play, and a big win like this will allow this fan support to continue. Mike, I do want to ask you too, before we wrap things up here, you look at Pitt, and the only thing that continues to jump out, and we've talked about this was actually brought up by Ray Porter Jr., who joined me last week on the postgame show. Pitt dominating, obviously, hard to have hiccups in that game. His concern is what's been your concern, that, yeah, Kenny Pickett's a star at quarterback. They're emerging receiver depth. They're emerging a star there at receiver. But offensively, and even with tight ends now, there's still not one guy at running back. There's a depth of running back. There's several running backs, and you see in this game, Pitt using, again, several running backs to try to get these rushing yards. That didn't even include Pickett on the ground, 43-33, and then Pickett, the third leading rusher, with 19. Is that going to be a problem, and does Pitt need to try to have somebody emerge still early in the year as the guy to take pressure off Pickett on the ground, to make it easier for him throwing with play-action pass, etc., against these quality teams that Pitt will see in a month and a half? Or is this just something to face facts? Pitt will not have a running back this year, and they're going to have to do this all year.
That's just a question that I continue to think about. I was actually going to bring this up before you. I didn't know you were going to ask that, so I'm glad you did. This is what I wanted to close with. I have concerns about it because I'm just an old school guy that believes at some point you have to be able to run the ball, especially in the fourth quarter. If Pitt has a 14-point lead and you have the ball, ideally to take time off the clock, you want to run. And to their credit, on the last drive, they did that.
They got it done when they need to. It just doesn't look good overall.
Last drive, yeah. Vincent Davis, he's getting beat up by fans.
19 for 33, an average of 1.7. He did get in the end zone big.
It's just not last good. Last drive, he got it done. I would say, yeah, but Alan, I saw him tweeting, and he's of the belief, and I'm starting to almost buy into this. I'm not there yet, but I'm almost there. He just thinks it's almost a waste of time to try to run the ball. He would rather just let the best player have the ball, throw the ball 3 downs.
Pickett, clearly the best player.
Yeah, and let Kenny Pickett do his thing, and why waste wasted down and getting two yards on first down. And then, I don't know the answer. I've always, and I've said this before, that I think they need a guy to, I'm not a fan. I've said this, and not him personally, because I think he's a tough kid. I think he's a good team kid. Vincent Davis shouldn't be getting more carries than Abanaconda. He had 12 carries.
He did. Yeah, he had more carries today.
Right. And Vincent Davis almost had 20 carries, which I just don't get how that continues to happen. But I don't know if they need to run the ball. If Kenny Pickett's going to look like he did today, thrown 37 times, the only time I would say they need to is when they need to take some time off the clock. And if you don't show a defense, the only reason I think they were trying to run today a little bit was I couldn't see in the back, but I'm guessing that they were just loading up the secondary and dropping guys back.
Right.
And they were almost just forcing daring Pitt to run the ball. And, Whipple did it. He's not going to have Kenny Pickett throw into a secondary of 8 guys back. He was going to turn the ball. The good thing is, Pitt didn't turn the ball over. 3 turnovers.
Right. A couple of turnovers could have swung this game. Absolutely.
3 turnovers for Tennessee, none for Pitt.
Right.
So I don't know. That's a question I'm sure is going to keep coming up over the next few weeks. And the only good thing about playing maybe lesser competition over the next couple weeks, 3 weeks, is that maybe it'll be a chance for them to work on their running game and maybe try to get something going before Virginia Tech game.
Yeah, I think there's a glass half full take of what you're saying, that lesser competition for the next few weeks before Virginia Tech could allow you to maybe have somebody emerge or just work on things or figure things out, figuring you're going to have a lead going into the fourth quarter. The glass half empty would be that maybe Pitt would be playing so well offensively, Kenny Pickett will be able to do it. They would have a lead. They'll have these wins secured, that maybe they would get so comfortable they wouldn't need to worry about the run game. They could kind of do what Alan's saying and just not waste downs or just mostly have it be shorter passes to act like the run. And then if you do that, you don't have that guy going into the gauntlet of 3 weeks in a row. And maybe then you do have a problem in some of those games because you could be very one-dimensional offensively. I think the only game that's a guaranteed loss unless they get more of a running game is Clemson, because they just are going to scheme against Pickett. And while Pickett has been great so far, if Pickett keeps up this level of play, he's looking at ACC Player of the Year. He's looking at some awards. I'm not saying he can't do it. Certainly would be impressing some NFL scouts, but that would be asking a lot to keep this up all year long. And with his injury history, maybe you don't want to see him running double digits every single game either. But you have to if you don't have a running back, because, again, it's not just about getting yards on the ground. If it allows the defense to know every single play is going to be a pass, like Alan's suggesting, it will make it tougher on Pickett. That will make it easier to scheme against them. Yeah. You're looking at Miami, Clemson, maybe even more so than Virginia Tech, will really be able to go at him with strong secondaries, tons of talent athletes all over the defense. So that'll be a problem. But Pitt wins this one. I mean, right now, as we were talking earlier in the show, you got to focus week to week. Fans got to focus week to week. Narduzzi's going to want to go week to week. And Pitt gets a 41-34 win over Tennessee. Mike, I do want to close with this, like we do on most of these post-game shows. Western Michigan is the next game. What do you expect out of that game? Of course, a lesser competition you're imagining to win, but anything you want to see in that game that would give you anything to take away moving forward, or anything Pitt still needs to work on, of course, that maybe they could work on in a game like that against Western Michigan as they look to keep rolling?
I see their defense just, obviously they need to get a little better. I'm sure that'll be a theme of the practice this week. Narduzzi being a defensive guy, he's not gonna like what he saw on tape. Although one of them was a block punt, and so that's not really on the defense, but defense needs to just step up a little bit, create a little bit more pressure. I don't think they got to the quarterback a little bit, but probably not as much as they'd like. They did create 3 turnovers, so keep the game under. I think the goal next week is keep the game under 21. That should be Pitt's theme every week. Keep the team in the teens. If they do that with this offense, they'll win a lot of games this year. But you can't be giving up 34 points. So I'm guessing their history of giving up 30 plus points over the last few years. When they do that, it's probably not very good. So they want to probably they got away with that today, but they don't want to do that again too many times.
It is very ironic for recent Pitt teams, even Pitt history, and certainly for Narduzzi and why he was brought to Pitt, for this Pitt team to be so good and be winning this year and potentially have a special year, thanks so much to the offense. The offense certainly is going to be what will drive them this season, but for the defense to potentially let this team down, and they haven't yet, but flirted with it in this win over Tennessee, would be ironic for Narduzzi, who's been such a defensive guy. So I'm sure also, Mike, that probably bothers him a little bit. I'm sure he's going to say, hey, if I'm losing this year, it's not because my defense, when that again is why he was brought there. So a big statement win for Pitt. They win at 41-34 on the road in Knoxville. Again, all of our post-game coverage will live over there at Pittsburgh Sports now. So head over there. We will also have video post-game reaction here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And also keep it here to this channel for our back-to-back day of post-game shows here for college football, as I will also recap the West Virginia game, their home opener against Long Island, the Long Island Sharks. So figuring a Mountaineer win after last week, but
this has to be a breeze, right? Yeah. This is seriously, this has to be, this game should be over at halftime, right?
You would imagine we could fire up the post-game show before even the game ends, but you would imagine that's the case. But again, first game though, at home for West Virginia since 2019, that is a big deal for the fan base, even though they're not coming off of the best of outings to open up the season. Looking for a big win to get things back going. That'll be here on Pittsburgh Sports Live as well. So again, if you haven't already, subscribe for notification when Carl Ludwig and I do that post-game show. Carl will make his post-game PSL debut, actually, when we wrap up that game.
Like one thing, I want to get your thoughts real quick. The big news now, too. The big news of the day, national news. What are your any take on Ohio State going down at home? Them going down at home doesn't happen very often.
No, and it was a big game to Oregon, of course. It's different than other early season losses for Ohio State, which have been to bad teams that they were able to make up for. This is a good loss, I guess. It is a good Oregon team. I didn't pick Oregon to win the game. I didn't think Oregon would win the game. That is semi-surprising, everything Ohio thinks of this year, and to lose it at home. I could have maybe seen them traveling and losing that on the road, but to lose it at home, it's also a big deal because you're losing in a Big Ten team that thinks they can win national title, losing to a Pac-12 team, which is lower end of the major conferences. We've talked about on our morning show here on Mic'd Up on PSL that the Big 12 or their new formation, whatever it becomes, might actually be not far down from where the Pac-12 is since they've been so weak in recent years. This potentially, makes the Pac-12 say, hey, no, we can beat good teams. So a big win for the Pac-12, big win for Oregon. We'll see where they're ranked now. We'll see what happens to Ohio State. A good loss, but surprising to lose at home. That's the story of the day, and that's the second big game of the day. The only other one was Iowa State and in Iowa. That's the only top 10 game of the day with two top 10 teams. But that one's the other one that's close for sure.
There's two other scores to keep an eye on. When we're done here, Pitt or fans can go check it out. Notre Dame's losing to Toledo in the third quarter.
And they almost lost last week, so eventually.
The other thing is hats off to, regardless of what happens, Duquesne is playing at Ohio University, and with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, they're up 18-13 over a max goal.
Yeah, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah, they have the ball in the red zone for on Ohio U's 14-yard line with a 5-point lead. They score a touchdown. You go up 12 points entering the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Heck of a tip of the cap to Jerry Schmidt's team. They took a big paycheck to go there, but I'm sure Ohio U thought that this was going to be a breeze of a game, but to this point, doesn't look that way.
No, yeah, that could be devastating for Ohio U. And of course, we're not talking Ohio State, but still Ohio U losing to Duquesne would be a big deal and be a big thing for Duquesne and that program that is on the rise as well. So that's a score to keep an eye on. That's tremendous to this point. Really wouldn't, no matter what happens, of course, the Mountaineers kick off against Long Island at 5:00, that weird random kickoff time, even though it's a game against an inferior opponent. I will have my own little rant on that another day. And then, of course, at Nittany Sports Now, we have the Penn State coverage. They lead Ball State as we speak 14-3. coming off the big win against Wisconsin. So post-game coverage there in Indy Sports Now, the Mountaineers coverage, WV Sports Now, and then the post-game show, and of course, Pittsburgh Sports Now for all after this big Pitt win. So again, we'll wrap things up with that. Pitt gets the victory 41-34. They make the statement on the road to Tennessee. I don't think anyone can sneeze at that. Pitt looks to continue to roll. Kenny Pickett looks to continue to roll. It's bright for the Pitt program right now. Narduzzi got to be happy. The fans got to be happy. We'll see how long this continues. But right now, week to week, it's a solid year for the Pitt football program, to say the